So absorbing and comprehending the very useful information in the first documentary, which I will link below in the description box, there were definitely some takeaways. So there's this scenario, or there's this process in which chemical companies can take out a hormone or an enzyme from a cow that has to do with milk production. They take that out, genetically modify it, and re-inject it into cows. And the purpose is to increase milk production in the cows. So there's fallout, and one of them is that cows become sick and or they die. So in the video, there's about 3 or 4 cows that are in front of the screen that are sick, dying, or dead. And there are a multitude of cows still standing that appear to be unaffected by the injected chemical. And that's how life goes. That is an example of life. I don't look at the cows that I can't see are being affected by chemicals and the harm that has been done in the food industry. I look at the cows that are being affected. Let me suggest it this way. If someone is able to do crack cocaine and do it for many years and function and keep a job and live through it, does that mean that recreational drugs are not deadly and harmful and detrimental to human life? So the answer is, of course, harmful recreational drugs like crack and cocaine are detrimental and harmful for human life. I don't want to test it. I don't care about the people that are able to do it for years and continue on to live to a ripe old age. There are many people that are affected, and this is the same thing that's happening in the cow scenario. Why look at the cows that are able to withstand this harsh chemical tampering? The example, the fallout is right before us with the 3 or the 4 dead cows. The chemicals that they're injecting in these cows are not safe. Just because someone appears to be unaffected by the use of recreational drugs like crack cocaine, it doesn't mean that there aren't people that take it and lose their mind. It doesn't mean there are people that take it and drop dead immediately. It doesn't mean that there are people that take it and die years later. Just like with genetically modified foods, we're all designed differently, and we're going to react to contaminants and chemicals differently. So just because I'm not suffering from gluten sensitivity from genetically modified foods doesn't mean it's invalid. Just because I'm not suffering from infertility or depression, it doesn't mean it's invalid. Just because it's not happening to me, it doesn't mean it's invalid. So please check out my information source. It will be linked in the description box below, and it's called GMO Revealed. Just like in part 1, I'm only going to talk about some of the things that are discussed in the documentary. Please check it out for certified, complete information. It's very intriguing and very informative. So I mentioned in the other video that how genetically modified food came into our grocery stores. The story of that is quite documentary. Around the time of the Great Depression and World War II, there was a time in American history called the Dust Bowl. And this is when the land had been overfarmed and it was devoid of nutrients, so it was unable to yield a crop due to poor crop rotation and poor soil care. So the government used the war efforts to refuel the economy, and afterwards there was this excess of petroleum. And what they did with the petroleum is they recycled it into a fertilizer. And I'm talking about the petroleum that they used to fuel the tanks. And they were able to use the petroleum because it had 3 compounds in it, which are nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. And this would support plant life and not a complete nutrient. But they did not stop there. Because the use of petroleum-based fertilizers is not a sound practice, the crops that were produced began to fail. They became susceptible to bacteria, fungus, and disease. And rather than take a step back and go back to how nature intended with the crop rotations and the compost piles to replenish the soil, they took it a step further and recycled yet another chemical from the war. But this part of the documentary was literally jaw-dropping. It's crazy. So the chemical companies and the government allowed for a resolution because the crops were failing. They were susceptible to bacteria and fungi and weeds. Because of the shortcut with the petroleum fertilizer, they were allowed to take Agent Orange, a known contaminant, a known toxin that devastated the lives of many American vets, and to genetically modify it to make it less harmful or supposedly not harmful for humans. If plant life can't receive nutrients, then when we consume them, we are deprived of life-supporting nutrients and our bodies labor to function. So you'll definitely want to check out the documentary to get more detailed, certified information about the harmful effects and the use of Roundup. But from what I gather, there are two compounds that would not normally be together. One is organophosphate, which is an Agent Orange type of chemical, and the other is glycine. Now, this is an essential amino acid that's required for life. It's required for plant life, human life, and animal life. And they've genetically modified these two substances to appear together, and they've made a water-soluble toxin. So the implication of that is that in nature, when toxins like this exist, they're fat-soluble. And this is a defense mechanism, and there are checks and balances in place to help to prevent the toxin from spreading all over, to tuck it away, to hide it, or for it to be naturally dissolved in nature. But because of the tampering, there is a water-soluble toxin that has gotten into places that it was never intended to be. It's in our drinking water supply, it's in the mist in the air, it's in the clouds, it's in the rain. And so what's most devastating about this toxic water-soluble chemical is that it hinders our ability to receive vital nutrients, and it starts with the plant life. So apparently the use of Roundup blocks something called the shikimate pathway. And in this pathway are nutrients that we're not able to process in our own body, but that we require to receive from plant life. So once plants are treated with Roundup, it no longer can receive the nutrients that we need to strengthen our immune systems, to heal, to fight disease. And it blocks something essential amino acid called tryptophan. Look it up, but it has to do with our cognitive responses, our mental capacity, anxiety, depression, mood swings, sleep. So the use of Roundup is dramatically affecting our quality of life and our ability to sustain life, and it's something that we are passing along to our children. This is not my grandmama's cornbread. Just read through the list of tamperings that are in every product that contains this contaminated wheat. Breaking down some other information that I learned in this documentary. Apparently, in order to use Roundup successfully, plants have to be genetically modified because of the way Roundup is designed. So genetically modified wheat is treated with Roundup, it grows, and there's this process where the wheat has to dry out before it can be harvested. So the chemical companies devised a way to speed up that process by retreating the plant with Roundup. And this enables the wheat to be processed quicker and for another crop to be planted within the same year. The fallout from that is allergic reactions. One of them is gluten sensitivity. Not dead, but affected. As I've always stated, I'm not certified. I'm just a regular, everyday person trying to find remedies and solutions to the problems that I'm facing. With that being said, please check out the documentary listed in the description box below. It's about an hour long, but don't be intimidated. I've discussed about the first 30 or so minutes. Very helpful for us to make better informed decisions that will improve our quality of life. The question is, why did I choose this particular name for this video? According to the information provided, if 16% of consumer decisions would change to solely purchase non-GMO organic foods, the profitability of genetically modified foods would end, so they would cease to exist. It is unnecessary stress and futile to try to shield yourself from all the toxic exposure that we experience every day. So the way that I combat this is to make my eliminations. One of my eliminations is genetically modified foods, and there are others, and I will link that video in the description box below if you're interested. My final thoughts are, so it's true. Not everyone is simultaneously dying from consuming genetically modified foods that have been treated with harsh genetically modified herbicides and pesticides. But this doesn't mean that there's not damage, and this doesn't mean that there are not consequences. Some people do not understand how to listen to their body and interpret the harsh symptoms that they're experiencing. Some people will experience fallout years later. In a lifestyle of consuming genetically modified foods treated with harmful genetically modified herbicides and pesticides, the fallout is endless. It equals multiple nutrient deficiencies, multiple vitamin deficiencies. This means we don't have the adequate currency to pay the body's bills. This leads to a lack of quality of life and even death. Not receiving the vital amino acid tryptophan, depending on who you are, leads to a multiple fallouts. Mental decline, depression, mental illness, obesity, and much, much more. Besides tryptophan, there were 3 other essential amino acids that are blocked when the shikimate pathway is blocked in plant life. But there are other nutrient deficiencies like the deficiency in glycine. And it leads to toxic buildup, death, decreased digestion, gut issues, rapid aging, disease, and much more. Get your knowledge. Until next time, thanks for watching.